Hello, and thank you for standing by, and welcome to the 9th episode of the World Series on Data Virtualization. My name is Kim Lukens, and I'm the moderator for the World Series on Data Virtualization. Please note that the webinar will be made available for on-demand viewing following the event. Denodo Technologies is sponsoring this series of expert talks on data virtualization throughout the rest of 2011. Today's topic will be how data virtualization can enable data services from external data sources that do not follow a pragmatic interface like some cloud or web applications, websites, databases buried in the hidden web, social networks, and PDF repositories. The need for data virtualization in these cases is the same as those where data is internal and is structured in databases or data warehouses, namely, how to produce enterprise-class data services that deliver integrated data to business applications from a dispersed set of data sources. But now it's about extending the information universe to sources that are external, sources that you do not govern, and which don't provide a standard API for access. Today's presentation will have two parts. The first part covers automating trace processes for positive ROI, a financial services case study which will be presented through a dialogue between Gary Baverstock of Denodo Technologies and Steve Cohn, Collections Manager for Direct Legal and Collections and the main business owner of the Trace project. This will be followed by an advanced technology session on advanced web automation, harnessing the web for virtual data services, to provide a more technical description of the technology and includes an actual demonstration of the Denodo platform. This will be presented by Suhas Kodagali, Product Manager with Denodo Technologies. So without further ado, I'd like to pass this presentation over to Gary Baverstock for part one of the session. Gary?
Thank you very much indeed, Kim. As you've heard, I'm Gary Baverstock. I'm the Regional Director for Northern Europe for Denodo, and I'm here with Steve Cohn, the Collections Manager for Direct Legal and Collections, otherwise known as DLC. Thank you very much indeed for your time, Steve. So Steve is going to tell us about the Trace project today. He's going to describe for us who DLC are, talk about the business challenges they were facing before the project, talk about the solution that was provided to meet those challenges, the main business benefits that have been achieved as a result, a little bit about the technology used in the solution, and then some of the next steps for DLC. So firstly, Steve, could you tell our audience a little bit about the debt collection industry here in the UK and also about DLC itself?
Certainly. Just to go through, overall the UK DCA industry is estimated to manage over £21 billion worth of receivables during the last year, 2011. Debt purchase plays a big and significant part in the makeup of the industry, with an estimated £8 billion worth being sold by the major financial institutions during 2011. In terms of DCA industry, certainly come to the fore in the news recently based on the credit crunch and personal debt levels that are out there. This focus has meant particular regulatory and compliance elements of the industry coming under more scrutiny recently, induced by lending standard review around treating customers fairly, OFT investigations around the practices within DCAs, and Ofcom concerns on silent calls and answer machine detection when using automated dialers. Moving forward, the businesses that are well positioned for the future are those that will innovate and work closely with their clients to deal with the focus placed on these areas in the industry. Just a little bit of background on DLC. We were established in 1992. We are the largest single site DCA in the UK with a headcount of 400, currently managing £2.1 billion worth of assets, and those assets are managed on both a contingency, where we collect for a commission, and a debt purchase basis.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much indeed, that's great. So what would you say differentiates in particular Direct Legal from its main competition?
DLC out there like to feel that we offer the full suite of collection services. We tailor those services for all of the industry sectors that are out there, including telecoms, banking, utilities, insurance, and more recently the public sector. Everything we do is centred around understanding our client's agenda and working closely to understand their core objectives. We can develop a long-term relationship and achieve an uplift in performance and service for them.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So at the point at which you started this Trace project, what were the particular business challenges that you were looking to solve?
We, in June 2010, introduced a new CRM database that massively improved the internal processes that we have, but has resulted in increased volumes being dealt with within our trace department because we've become more efficient in identifying the cases that require a trace to be conducted. That has increased the volumes in there. Alongside this, changes in legislation surrounding the acceptance of electronic data have added extra pressure and workload to the department as well. All of this resulted in challenges to maintain the service levels that we've currently got in place within the team and made it more difficult to react to the peaks in demand that we've experienced over the course of the last year.
Okay. So how would you sum up your main requirements then for the Trace project as you started out?
Well, traditionally, the only way that we could deal with this extra work going into the department would simply be to recruit additional staff. Those staff in that area would manually access the different databases, websites and other sources that we gather information about a subject. They would then log each source, input names and passwords, and manually extract the data for each source. And on average, each trace agent could complete around 7 cases per hour. Obviously, valuable time would be spent in a highly repetitive activity of gathering and interpreting this data.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And so what made you, as you started out and looked at how you're going to solve these particular challenges, what made you choose the particular technical approach that you used on the project?
We simply wanted to improve productivity and efficiency within the team. Could we remove over 100 hours per week from the manual work carried out? But on top of that, could we do that and remain accurate and compliant in what we do? So essentially, could we automate part of the process but still provide results which are at least 99% accurate if this work was to be completed manually?
Okay, thank you. So the solution itself, moving to that, can you tell us about the particular solution you've built? What are the main features?
Denodo were willing to spend time understanding our business processes and then using their expertise able to apply the software in a way that would meet our objectives, as we mentioned. In order to do this, a proof of value exercise was undertaken where Denodo spent 2 weeks with our trace and IT team to understand the business processes and how we would use the different data sets within the software.
Yeah. Okay. And what does the solution you've built actually do? What are the main features that it's providing?
The Denodo platform takes a single source input from a form of debtor's record from DLC's existing system. These records are then matched with data from external sources, and depending on results from each system, a percentage match is written to an output file, which is then utilised by the agents to further the trace process. This gives us a combined view of all of the key data, enables us to replicate keystrokes that the agents are currently completing manually, and then provides a single view of those results. From this, we're then able to build up a better management information to successfully manage and review performance within the team, and review those data sources that we're actually using. And are they the right ones that we could be using, or are there other ones that we could implement in there and champion challenge against the current set that we have?
Okay, very good, thank you. And as you heard up front, we're going to be explaining the detail of the technology used in this project in part 2 of this session, but just to place it into context. So what Steve's been describing here is the use of web automation technology to go out and access web data that you would normally manage manually or you'd access by using normal human behaviour. So the platform has been used to go to the websites to access the information, to replicate that human behaviour, extract the data and bring it into the organisation. So it essentially gives you a complete way of automating the operation of accessing data from a website, extract the data, deal with the structures, automate the actual processing that you'd normally go through. Again, essentially as if you were emulating the human behaviour. That web automation technology is a part of the data virtualization platform, so it's another source of data, if you like, that is then built into the virtualization platform that gives you the ability to access data from any source whether it is web data, whether it's in an existing in-house application, whether it's in the cloud, whether it's anywhere, and give the ability to access that and make it available and combine it together with other sources to give you things, as Steve mentioned, like combined views of information, to automate the extraction of information, and then to make it available to any consuming applications, so in this case being made available to the further trace processing that goes on. And as I've said, we'll cover that in more detail in part 2, but just to place that into a little bit of context. So back to you then, Steve. So how has the project progressed? Are you pleased with the results, and how are things going?
Yeah, we've been very pleased with the results. The results have meant that we've not needed to recruit a further 6 FTE to deal with the volumes that we've currently highlighted, and were being received in the team as a result of the changes that we've already mentioned. The trace agents, crucially as well, are very pleased because it reduces the amount of repetitive work that they need to handle, and also increases their opportunity to convert instructions into a positive result. And obviously, as a tracer, they're paid by results, and the more information that we can give them, and the easier and the smoother that we can do that for them, the better it is for them. And we only now present them with cases where a lead has been established, and they can use that information to take on and use in a positive way.
Very good. And what would you say are the key advantages that the project's going to give DLC as a business moving forward?
Having analysed the information that we got through from the proof of value, we feel that savings of time in approximately 200 hours per week in terms of what we're currently doing to what we can do using the software. It also provides us with a competitive advantage when tendering for future trace business. Also, crucially, gives us full compliance on all of the activity that we take. As we've mentioned previously, it's a very hot topic for the industry at the minute, and being compliant on all tracing that we do is vitally important for the grounding of the business. Provides a new product for existing clients that we have on board, and potentially something that we can use for prospective clients. And there are also potentially avenues that we can explore within the business where we could utilise this software for those areas as well.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So you started to mention there about what you might be doing next with the platform. What are your current thinking? What's your current thinking about what you may do next with the platform?
Well, having reviewed what we've done within the trace department and having worked closely with Denodo, we've looked to apply this to other business processes that we know utilise a whole different view of in terms of data sets that are available to us. Particular areas that this could be used in are the litigation area of our business and the third-party debt management department. We feel that there could be time savings produced by being able to provide the single view of the data that is used in those areas for decisions to be made, and again save time where we're having to manually produce that information at the minute and combine it together to give that view and get that answer.
Okay, very good, thank you. So just finally, I guess, could you, Steve, sum up your overall experiences on the project?
The project has met and exceeded our initial objectives, so we're very, very pleased in terms of how that's gone. Denodo have been a very good partner to work with and have taken essentially a lot of time to understand our business in the first instance and work with us to ensure the software is fully meets our objectives that we set out previously. The key has been to keep the objectives simple and clear. Whilst the process may be complex, all the stakeholders can see the overall benefits of the software very clearly, which creates then the buy-in to the project at all levels that we've seen. So very, very pleased indeed.
That's great. Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you, Steve. Thank you very much indeed for your time, and it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
So, as we stated in the introduction to this webinar, it is in 2 parts. We're now going to move to that second part and provide you with a more detailed explanation of the web automation and data virtualization technology behind the direct legal case study. We'll talk to you about the issues and provide some examples. So I'm very pleased to hand you over to my colleague Suhas Kodagali. Over to you, Suhas.
Thank you, Gary. In this session, I will explain from a technical point of view the web automation capabilities of the Denodo data virtualization platform. When we talk about advanced web automation, we're talking about a technology that will allow us to harness a huge amount of data and services that are accessible only through a web interface. There are three primary reasons why organizations should consider web data automation. One, the large distributed repository of information on the web is a potent source of market and competitive intelligence and boosts the company's ability to respond to new business needs. Second, this capability will allow companies to integrate business processes that are hidden behind a web interface that can be coordinated to function along with enterprise business processes. And finally, automating web data processing will reduce the amount of manual effort and lead to huge cost savings. We can see on this little chart over here that there is an increase in the number of websites that do not provide a programmatic interface. So how do we bridge this gap? The Denodo web automation tool bridges this gap by using a human interface in a programmatic way to interact with any web data and processes, leading to increased access to information as well as cost savings. We saw some reasons why companies must look to acquire web automation capabilities. And this means extracting web-based data for enterprise use and automating web interfacing enterprise processes within the overall IT and business context. But web automation should not be considered in isolation to the rest of the IT infrastructure for data and processes. As is seen in the diagram, Denodo seamlessly integrates its first-class web automation capabilities into its enterprise-class data virtualization platform to allow for a true 360-degree vision of the data. Now, let's take a step back and think about what we mean when we talk about web sources, which are often mistaken to include only websites. Web sources include all data sources that sit behind a web interface. So any data that is accessed using web services, like partner data, then gets included in the universe of data sources that can be accessed using web automation. Questions are often asked as to whether it's possible to build a robust and reliable solution to automate web-based data and business processes. Through this presentation, we will answer some of those questions. Let's start by looking at some high-value data sources which contain useful data or processes needed for business. Automating data retrieval from these web sources can dramatically reduce costs of development and maintenance. On these slides, you can see references of customers where those technologies are being used in day-to-day business. In some cases, web automation is the core of their solutions, but in many other cases, it's included in a more general data virtualization solution. So let's go to the list of data sources. First, we have the public static websites and dynamic websites. Here, intelligent navigation and filtering is required to find the content that's relevant to business. Next, we have the B2B processes or partner application, where there is only a web interface to interact with. These are different from the public websites in that the navigation is quite complex, with different steps involving large forms and requiring full control of what is happening at each steps. In these scenarios, an enterprise-grade level SLA is needed. Then, we come to subscription services, where in addition to complex navigation, it is necessary to deal with different authentication protocols. Fourth, we have software as a service applications and more generally web applications that do not provide an API, and even if they do not support the same functionality as the human-oriented interface. Then we have sources under the umbrella of social media, that's blogs, reviews, that can be used in reputation management or to gain an understanding of what their people are saying about me, my company, and my products. basically trying to understand the pulse of the market. Finally, we have data.gov and other reference sources where huge amounts of data is publicly available. We talked about the importance of integrating web data with enterprise data. But why isn't it being done more often? Companies these days face a number of challenges with web access. Here are some of them. First, complexity. Websites and web applications are getting more complex and dynamic each day by using technologies like JavaScript or Ajax. Moreover, data that we require could be scattered through many pages. The main data could be on one page and the details could be on another. Say we access the data. How do we integrate it? Companies do not want isolated data or processes. They need seamless integration with enterprise data and processes. For example, we may need to fill a form on a web application with the input data coming in from CRM, or we would want to combine web data and enterprise data to return a holistic view to the end users. Next, we come to the reliability of the solution. How can we be sure that each time we run the process, we get the same result? What if the source website has changed? Websites are not 100% reliable, so how can we be sure that the process is correctly executed? Then we look at performance and scalability of the solution. Is the extraction process optimized? Can it be scaled enterprise-wide? Last but not least, we have security. Many websites tend to be locked by complex security systems. How does web automation support these websites? Does it support access to these websites at all? Now let's go ahead and take these challenges one by one. We come to the first challenge, complexity. Every web automation process in Denodo is modeled as a workflow, be it to extract web-based data or automate web interfacing processes. For developers, Denodo offers a workflow tool for graphically designing the logic of the web automation process. Some typical workflow components are iterators, loops, conditions, etc. But within a web automation workflow, there are two major components. One, a navigation component that records a sequence of actions that a human can perform on the web interface, like filling forms or clicking on buttons. Then we have the data extractor that contains a predefined pattern to obtain the required data from the web page. To minimize the complexity of developing these components, Denodo offers tools that manage all that complexity in a transparent manner. These tools allow developers to record navigation sequences or highlight desired data on a web browser so an extraction pattern is automatically calculated. This is best seen with an example. The navigation sequence tool allows users to graphically design the logic of a business process. Though this tool is capable of dealing with very complex web automation processes, we will consider a typical data extraction workflow. Let's suppose we have customer names in our internal database that we would like to find in a web directory such as the Yellow Pages website. We see here the workflow needed to execute this. In this workflow, there's one navigation sequence component that's highlighted and a data extractor component right beneath it. The rest of the workflow is composed by an iterator that iterates the results returned by the data extractor component. Now, let's see how to graphically configure the navigation sequence component. All I do is click on the record button of the toolbar and specify the page where the process starts. That's yellowpages.com, and click OK. The yellowpages.com site opens, and here I click on People. Right-clicking the mouse over any element of the page allows me to select the action that I want to perform on it. Using the same technique, I fill the name and last name fields of the form. These variable names tell the tool that I'm filling sample data and that these variables will be provided each time I execute the web automation process. After this, I click on the Find button and wait until I get the results of the search. Now we go to the graphical tool where I open the sequence component and import the sequence of steps that I just recorded in the browser. Once the sequence is loaded, I want to test to make sure it's doing what I want it to. So I provide the name and last name values. Let's use the same names, Paul and Simon, and see what happens. A browser window appears and the sequence gets reproduced on it. Navigates to the home page, clicks on People, fills the form, and clicks on the Find button. And we're on the results page. This means that the execution was successful. Finally, in order to build a web automation process where variables name and last name are used to perform the search, I use the init component where I specify both these variables as input parameters and flag them as mandatory. Now we come to the configuration of the data extraction component. In the extractor wizard, we can see some panels. In the upper left one, you can see the structure of the data that I would like to extract from the page. I can create new fields, even hierarchical structures here, but let's go with the three that we have right now. Once the structure has been created, I export it to the browser. In the browser toolbar, I assign samples of the data I want to extract to the corresponding fields. I do this by selecting the elements of the page that correspond to each of the fields of the structure that I just created. I highlight the element with the mouse, right-click, and assign its value to the corresponding field. I repeat the process for the address and the name fields as well. Now, when I click on Import Data from Browser, the tool will generate a pattern which you can see in the panel below. In the panel to the right, I'll verify to see if the pattern matches all the results of the web page. As you can see, a single sample is enough for the tool to generate a pattern and pull results. If optional fields appear with certain results, then we'll have to add more samples. Now that we've configured the navigation sequence and the data extractor components, let's execute the entire process. Again, we provide the input parameters. Then the browser window opens and we can see how it executes the sequence and pulls the required information from the web page. We can see the results on the web page as well as when they get exported to the wizard. And that concludes the demo on the data extraction component. Now, in addition to these components, Denodo also provides advanced debugging tools to facilitate development and maintenance of web automation processes. In this slide, you can see two screenshots of those tools. To the left, we have the navigation sequence debugger that allows a stepwise execution to detect possible errors. And to the right, we have the data extraction tester that allows you to verify that the extracted pattern matches the desired data. These debugging tools add a powerful verification layer over the development to make sure that it is error-free. They also make web automation easy to develop, implement, and maintain, even for those with little or no programming experience. Let's now move to integration. As discussed earlier, Denodo offers seamless integration of web automation with enterprise data and processes through the data virtualization layer. This means that any web automation process can be seen inside the data virtualization layer as a web service. The input fields of the web automation process are mapped to the input parameters of the web service, and the output of the web automation process is mapped to the results of the web service. Once this integration happens, the power of the data virtualization layer opens up a lot of integration possibilities. For example, filling input parameters of the web automation process with enterprise data, or to clean and normalize the data returned by web automation and combine it with enterprise data. So, let's see how this integration actually happens. In this example, we will see how the web automation process that we built in the earlier demo can integrate with an internal system. After we have built and tested the web automation process, we are now ready to deploy it on the data virtualization server. The web automation process definition could be exported from the graphical development tool and imported later into the Denodo server. But in this case, I'm going to deploy it directly from the graphical development tool. In this wizard, I specify a name for the view in the data virtualization layer and provide connection parameters. Now, let's go to the administration tool of Denodo. This tool allows us to build relationships between different data sources. In this example, I will use names existing in internal systems like databases as input parameters. We have two rows, Paul Simon and John Smith. These will serve as input values that we will feed into the web services and retrieve information. Denodo uses a relational model, so the combination of both sources is implemented as a join operations. As you can see, I'm connecting the name and last name variables of the internal source with the input fields of the Yellow Pages view. I specify a nested parallel join method. This allows searches on Yellow Pages to be executed in parallel, as we shall soon see. The next step is to rename or remove duplicate fields in the output and give a name to the combined view. A tree view enables you to see how the derived view was built. At this point, I have a final data view that returns the data that I need. This view is accessible via JDBC or ODBC, but if I would like it to be accessible via web services as well, then I right-click on it and create a new data service. Change the name if required. The tool supports the publishing of SOAP and REST web services. Now, I can either deploy the web service into an external web container or into an internal built-in web container. Let's go with the internal container for now. Once this is done, I have to check the overall process. I'm going to go ahead with using the REST web services here because the results can be shown directly on a browser. Remember that I don't have to provide input parameters for yellow pages. Denodo keeps trace of the query capabilities of each source and detects whether mandatory parameters can be filled using input data. And as you can see, there are two browsers open, each one accessing and retrieving information in parallel. And then we have the results. So as you just saw, the whole process of building a web automation process, combining it with other pieces of data and making it available to corporate systems is made easy with Denodo. Now that we have resolved the complexity and integrated web data with enterprise data and processes, our next concern is ensuring confidence in the execution of the web automation process. This confidence hinges on two questions that we asked earlier in the presentation and are now going to answer. First, what happens when the source changes? Web sources are autonomous and change without notice. As we saw in the demo, a unique feature of Denodo web automation is that it mimics the human navigation pattern that makes it resilient to changes on the web page. Unless the change has directly impacted the elements used in a navigation sequence or extraction pattern, the process remains unaffected. Now, should the navigation sequence or extraction pattern be affected, then Denodo raises an alert saying that the process is not working, and with the help of the development graphical tools shown earlier, you should be able to find the error and fix it very quickly. Furthermore, we should note that often data accessed using web services like partner data does not change arbitrarily. Enough notice is given so that the web automation process can be adjusted. So the issue of source change applies more to data accessed from third-party websites. The next question is how to verify that a complex web automation process has correctly executed. It is possible to catch message errors returned by a web application and to act according to them. For example, say we want to make a purchase. We introduce the item to be purchased on the form and get a response saying that it is not in stock. We can take this response into account while designing the workflow and ensure that the application moves to a different branch. Denodo also has built-in support for automatic retries and error notification. When an unexpected error occurs, the execution trace can be used to find the point of failure. All these features play an important role in giving users the confidence in the web automation process. Regarding performance, a web automation process will run significantly faster than what a human could achieve by using the web interface. Now, there are several reasons why the Denodo web automation process is fast and efficient. 1. Denodo uses lightweight, low-footprint browsers. These browsers are optimized for high performance. And one way this is ensured, for example, is to avoid loading unnecessary elements of the page. Second, the graphical interface that we just saw in the demo is not required at execution time, so we don't incur that additional rendering cost. Next, parallel access to multiple web pages inside a single web automation process helps to boost performance. And finally, an important feature related to performance is the ability to reuse browsers. When a web automation process ends, instead of destroying the browser, it is sent to a pool so it can be reused later. Denodo also allows the reuse of common navigation. This means continuing the navigation from the point where the last process ended. This can be very useful because it saves the time lost due to the authentication process. Now, moving to scalability. Denodo has the ability to scale horizontally by deploying a pool of browsers on different servers. High availability architecture with active-active and active-passive configurations is also available. Denodo scalability can be demonstrated by some customer examples. Corporate Screening is a global provider of pre-employment screening and background investigations. In this company, Denodo integrates over 1,000 different workflows using web automation. The Phone House, which is world's largest telecom retailer, supports over 10 million transactions per year with enterprise-level SLA guarantees using web automation. So these are some examples that demonstrate that Denodo web automation solution can support as much workload as is needed and is definitely scalable enterprise-wide. Coming to security, an important question that is asked is whether Denodo is able to deal with a vast range of authentication methods and protocols that are present in current web applications. Denodo can manage in a transparent fashion the authentication of HTTPS connections and certificates, session cookies, and HTTP and NTLM authentications. This process is made simple when you authenticate yourself into the website and record the process. This will be reproduced during subsequent executions. Another aspect of security is about how credentials are managed, or rather how sensitive data is stored. In the Denodo platform, all sensitive data is stored securely and never appears in the metadata or any log files. A unique feature of Denodo is that it allows a web automation process to stop and return control to a human or another application, wait for input, and then continue to execute from the point where it had stopped. This allows the web automation process to be interactive. An important application of this from a security perspective is in the case of capture image. As human intervention is required, Denodo will return the capture image, freeze the web automation process, and wait for information. When the required input is given by the human, the process will continue to execute, thereby enabling automation while maintaining the integrity of the system. In conclusion, what should you look for in any web automation platform? First, the tool should have powerful graphical tools that automate processes even with the most complex of websites without programming. This becomes important with maintenance over time. Next, seamless integration with corporate data and processes. Third, advanced change detection and error management capabilities are key to handle dynamism inherent in web data. Next, high performance that is driven by optimization techniques. And finally, All of these features should be built into an enterprise class solution while ensuring security and scalability. And here we see some success stories where Denodo has implemented web data automation. And that brings us to the end of this presentation. Thank you for listening, and over to you, Kim.
Thank you, Gary, Steve, and Suhas. We've had some great questions come in so far. Thanks to all of you who have submitted them. We welcome and encourage you to send any additional questions after the webinar to dvworldseries@denodo.com. We will review all questions coming in and ensure they are personally responded to following the event. We encourage you to attend the entire World Series on Data Virtualization. If you have just joined the series, or if you've missed any of the earlier episodes in the series, please note that we have the recordings available on demand. To view them, visit our website and navigate from the homepage banner on the World Series of Data Virtualization to the page on the series where you will find the schedule with links to all the recordings, and mark your calendars for the rest of the World Series. We have some exciting episodes coming ahead. Our next episode will be on Wednesday, December 14th, titled Are You Being Served? Data Virtualization Speeds Customer Service and Back-End Office Integration at Retailers, which will be presented by David Garcia Hernando, Customer Applications and Business Exchange Manager with the Phone House. This will be followed by a webinar on Wednesday, December 21st, titled MDM 3.0, Virtual MDM and Distributed Data Governance, Advanced Hybrid Approaches in MDM's Future, with Mehmet Arun, MDM Solution Owner with a global pharmaceutical company and VP of DAMA International. Well, folks, we have reached the end of our webinar for today. I'd like to thank our speakers and thank all of you for your participation. Signing off until next week, this is your host, Kim Lukens.
The World Series on Data Virtualization is brought to you by Denodo Technologies, the leader in data virtualization, delivering unmatched flexibility, performance, and ROI.